Good afternoon, everyone. My pranams to Sadhguru, Swami Sri Hari Prasad, members of the clergy, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the kind invitation. It is a great honor to be here and the hospitality. Uh, on my way to the airport from Colombo, I got this SMS from a leading news agency indicating that the Central Bank of India and the government of India has allowed Sri Lanka to deal with Indian traders in Indian rupees, which was a great news to my belief. I always promoted that because long before the US dollar was invented, we have been trading with each other. So that, with that note, let me start. Right to education is key to peace. I will touch on the Sri Lankan experience, a bit of history, and what we as Sri Lanka can do to survive, prevail this crisis and probably build a better land. So in the case of Sri Lanka, ladies and gentlemen, education is key. And but my belief and my experience is that Sri Lankans generally forget. So they need to be reminded over and over again. And in 1921, when we were both under the British wanted to experiment, I think, systems of governance in their colonies, and they appointed this commission called the Donamo Commission, which was headed by the Earl of Donamo, 6th Earl of Donamo in 1921, and they released their report about the situation of Sri Lanka, how they can be allowed to govern themselves, etc. And when I read the report now, I see that they have seen the present situation very clearly in 1921. So what I'm trying to say is that Sri Lankans have a lot to learn, and they have not yet got the right picture on being peaceful. Free education, as one eminent scholar quoted yesterday, if you may remember, in Sri Lanka, free education is not valued to my understanding. And we have a welfare system, largely a welfare system, which is in fact benefiting the rich and the poor equally, which also is not good, especially at a time like this when we have to take the country forward. Misleading youth had been done on so many occasions since independence. And the first instance that comes to my mind is 1956, where a few people came out and said that Sinhala should be the official language and others are not. Then by now, the population has realized that those who said that and those who promoted that, they have realized the mistake, and those who promoted those policies, their grandchildren are not in Sri Lanka, they're married to foreigners, they studied in Catholic schools and English medium, and they migrated. So the people are fighting with each other. Fortunately, violent conflict has ended, but as I said, constant reminding has to be done. Then comes 1962, where Ms. Bandaranayake nationalized private schools, especially Christian schools and some Buddhist schools and Muslim schools. And now we are ended up with a situation where the quality of the workforce is questioned because investors are not coming, and the world, according to some World Bank reports, it's not anything else, but the primary reason is that riots and trade union actions are chasing the investors away. I mean, they don't want to come. It's fair enough, because even if you and I want to invest in a country, they would look for peace and stable governance. As we all know, and as we all have to agree, that Sri Lanka is a multi-ethnic island, and human resource is the greatest strength that we have. And we need to polish our human resources constantly. And I pay my tribute to the great Emperor Ashoka at this moment for helping us to do that more than 2000 years ago. And if I may quote the Theosophical Society, I'm sure you are aware of the Theosophical Society. The Theosophists in Sri Lanka, they believe, I read that American Army Colonel Henry Steele Olcott, who came to Sri Lanka in 1880s, just before that religious conference professor was referring to. Theosophists in Sri Lanka believe that Colonel Olcott was a reincarnation of Emperor Ashoka. His intention was to establish Buddhist schools to provide high quality education so that the Sri Lankan masses will be raised to international standards. In fact, it was Colonel Olcott who sized the Buddhist flag into international standards. The Buddhist flag, ladies and gentlemen, is 137 years old. This year, April this year, it celebrated 137 years. It was originally a long flag, which what we call a Daja Pataka, a long flag. But it was Colonel Olcott who advised Sri Lankan leaders to bring it to the international standards. So the Buddhist flag that we see everywhere in the world was designed by Sri Lankans, but sized by Colonel Olcott. And similarly, in the 1920s and 30s, Sri Lankans were able to get down foreign resources, eminent persons to polish our human resources. But gradually, after independence, as I said, in 1956 and 1962, we failed. And if I may go back in history, as I read in the 3rd century BC, the Chola kingdom, that is where we are standing today, has had dealings with the Chinese Empire, very strong relations. And I read that it is now known as the Chennai Connect along the Belt and Road Initiative of China. So Sri Lanka has a great potential to work with these two cascading two massive economies, India and China, and be a facilitator to help these two both old good friends and give our human resources with the intention of preventing conflicts. Because misleading youth, as I said, has been the key reason for the conflicts in Sri Lanka. And that has to be addressed as the primary focus. Now, in the latest developments in Colombo, I've been witnessing as a university teacher that there is a tendency to provoke young Buddhist monks into violent moves. It may be a move to, get one monk injured or something and develop another bright idea of changing governments, which will affect stability. So I hope and pray that nobody falls into that prey, because at this moment, that should not be the things that we will be doing, because we have to prevail to overcome the crisis. And non-violent communication is very important, because in Sri Lanka, we see a lot of communication happening, but even in social media, etc., non-violent communication is not really focused. But I believe that the policymakers should focus on non-violent communication. And some of you may know that in the Western world now, the giraffe is considered as a symbol of non-violent communication. And recently I wrote an article in the media. I said that there were no giraffes at Isipatana, where the Buddha delivered his first sermon, because according to historic documents, there were a lot of deer there, but no giraffes. But why the Western world believe that giraffe is the symbol of non-violent communication is because one reason is the height. It can see far. So non-violent communication is very important, especially for Sri Lanka, because Sri Lankans, they love conflicts, ladies and gentlemen. Because of my trainings and studies, I lead a very happy family life with my wife. but because I studied conflict resolution, So, and so we still have a long way to go. And the present situation is not easy, but I consider it as a great opportunity. This crisis, where we have mismanaged the welfare system, the checks and balances of the system of government and economic management were ignored for various selfish reasons. And in all my writings, I have encouraged the youth specifically not to get misled with the selfish motivations. But fortunately, I'm happy that the social media and the smartphones are playing a bigger role in the lives of the youth, including my own children. I have two grown-up children. Because of the cell phone, the smartphones, that the bridge between ethnic groups are becoming stronger, so that the understanding is getting more stronger, which is a very great thing. So, having said that, I know a lot of speakers took a lot of time. I don't want to take 20 minutes of your valuable time. It's almost lunchtime. So let me conclude there with the expectation that the Sri Lankans will continue with good neighbors such as India and the countries in the region, so that we prepare our human resource, raise the quality of our human resources, and maybe a hub to train the regional human resources as well, so that we face the economic crisis with a non-violent human resource. Thank you very much.